The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast without the breaks and commercials. Now, here's host Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Geneva, your host, every Saturday right here on News Radio Wham 1180, 10 o'clock, and all the old shows are, and you know it, on NoNonsenseRoundtable.com. Today, I have a special guest who's going to talk to us about two different things, and a very respected ophthalmologist, that is how we say it. You know, when I was a kid, I used to say, I'm going to the optimist. So I know better now, doctor. His name is Rajeev. Rajeev is the way to pronounce that. And Ramchandran. I'm having a tough time saying that regardless. So let's have you say that.
Sure. Ramchandran.
Ramchandran. And he's going to be here to talk to us about a couple of things. One is the Indian community in Rochester. And I discovered through NIDA's association with the Indian community, what a wonderful group of people they are. Warm people, a history of service to Rochester that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, and a history of their culture. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about. And the other thing we're going to talk about is with the upcoming solar eclipse, there's a lot to talk about you, your eye care, what you need to do, what you not need to do, what you need to do with your kids, because you know how they're going to look at this thing. And from that, I think that's a pretty good starting point, Doctor. Let's start talking about a little bit about you, your history, how you got here, where you're born, and second generation, I would think, right? Or
that's right. So I was born right in the United States, in the Chicago area, and then my family moved here to Rochester in the 80s when my father got a job at Kodak. Good old Eastman Kodak was booming back in the 80s, right? So my father and then my mother both worked at Kodak here, and grew up in Henrietta and then in Pittsford, went to high school at Pittsford Sutherland High School, and went away briefly for college, came back from medical school at the University of Rochester, went away briefly to train, and came back to finish my fellowship here at the University of Rochester, and I've been here since as a retinal surgeon at the University of Rochester.
Well, the question I'd love to ask, and I know everybody might be getting tired of this, but I like the question, is what did you want to do when you were like 10 years old?
Well, when I was 10, I think I wanted to be an engineer. I think my dad had drilled it into me the importance of looking at design and looking at building things. He was an engineer, manufacturing engineer for Eastman Kodak. He had built some cameras. He built some health equipment for Eastman Kodak. So I was really enamored by that. And I also like planes. So I was all into planes and wanted to probably become an aeronautical engineer. But then in 9th grade, I took a biology class here at Sutherland High School, and I was really into how the body worked. And, growing up, I had a story where my aunt had a retinal detachment in both eyes in India. And my father and my uncle both helped her to come to the United States to get treatment when she couldn't get the treatment she needed in India. And she had sight-saving surgery here in the United States at Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia. And that was the oldest eye hospital in the United States. And so it was amazing that pioneering surgeon was developing some surgery there at Wills and other places. Surgeons were developing the same. And that surgery basically saved our eyesight. And I do that surgery now every week. So it's just amazing.
It's amazing to me because we're not just talking about, run-of-the-mill ophthalmology. We're talking about surgery.
That's true.
My Lord, that's got to be, the first time you do that, it's got to be nerve-wracking for you, right?
Oh, definitely. When you're trained, it's
got to be horrible.
It's you have butterflies in your stomach, but you got a good programs in this country to train in surgery. And I went to Duke University and I trained at the Duke Eye Center, and it was a great training experience. And I came here and I trained more with my mentors and teachers in Rochester to learn the fine details of retinal surgery, and it's been a blast ever since to save sight. It's biblical, saving sight. So.
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, actually the the sermon today or a Catholic Mass was about Jesus Christ, putting mud on this fellow's blind eyes and saving him. But am I wrong? Did I find out that you went to Albert Einstein University too? Wasn't that?
I went to Albert Einstein Medical Center in Philadelphia. I trained there for a year, and that was kind of in between my medical school and my ophthalmology residency. So yes, I did have an exposure in the Albert Einstein system there.
Well, for a point of reference, I mean, didn't one of the alumni just decide that they're going to pay off all the student debt for these students and they're in that college right now?
Yeah, and that's in New York City, the Albert Einstein up there. Yeah, and so
wow.
there are a lot of successful people out there, and I'm sure a lot of business people who care a lot about health and healthcare and want to make sure that we have good doctors who are not burdened by debt, so they can decide on what their true passion is and not have to decide on what they want to do based upon money.
Well, I always say it's a marketable skill. I mean, you can go to college and get a college degree for something that you can't get a job in. I mean, you have job security. I mean, there's never going to be you're never going to be without patience. So let's talk a little bit about the Indian community, all told, because I got familiar with the Indian community because Nita got involved with. Believe it or not, the genesis of this is that she saw a Bollywood movie in Providence, Rhode Island, with my daughter at one time, and that precipitated her interest in Bollywood movies, which got to be a deeper interest in Indian culture, not just the movies, because the movie business, it's extraordinarily large in India because there's so many people, and then she started making friends with people in your group, the Indian Community Center, and then eventually you put her on the board of directors. And I have to tell you, the experience that I've had with the people in the community center, I mean, a culture that a lot of people don't know about, warm, family-oriented, religious. It's just wonderful. And there's a lot of things that you do for the community, I think that the community's not even aware of. So, I mean, we have about a minute and a half left in the section, but that's one of the things before we talk about the eclipse and what you need to do to protect your eyes in that professional sense. I want to get a little bit into this.
Sure, definitely. So Indian culture is very important to me. I was a South Asian Studies major at the University of Pennsylvania, and that's why I chose that school, because they had a South Asian program. And I learned a lot about India as an undergraduate there. And I love when other people who don't happen to be of the Indian cultural background or Indian heritage have an interest and have a passion for India. Bollywood movies are seen as entertainment, of course, like Hollywood. So they depict a various aspect of India. It may not be always the true aspect of India, but it is an entertainment aspect. And when I met Nita, her knowledge of Bollywood and her fascination for kind of what it brought to understanding about the Indian culture was great. But she went beyond that. She wasn't just about seeing the movies, but trying to really understand the true meaning behind the culture. And she was engaging with all her students, often who were from the Indian community locally, who wanted to check out this course at the Osher School at RIT, and so it was amazing to see that when I attended one of her classes. And so I got to know Nita and say, this is a person who really needs to be on our board to bring that aspect of a non-Indian being interested in India, and how can we incorporate the larger Rochester community into our own board, and to really bring that community into seeing what we do. And so I grew up here in Rochester, and it was all about service growing up. And service is really important. So my elders in the community, especially Dr. Padmanabh Kamath, who's a pathologist in town and is sort of the father of the modern Indian community center, he really instilled, you have to serve the community, the greater community in Rochester. There are people in need in this community. And a lot of my own family were doctors, teachers, engineers who worked in the community to help people. And we would go to soup kitchens, kitchens. We would go and serve the homeless. So this is all part of our growing up in the Indian community and doing service. So when I became chair of the Indian Community Center just before the pandemic started, I said, well, what are the service activities we could do? Well, the pandemic then happened, and we basically had to start seeing how we could help the community in different ways.
And we're going to talk more about that right after this. This is Dom Geneva for my friends at Valley Fuel. It was decades ago that Phil Saunders called me up and said he was starting a new company, Valley Fuel. And man, I got to tell you, this has been a great experience. If you're looking for affordable propane or home heating oil, contact Valley Fuel. If you want reliable delivery, contact Valley Fuel. If you want to do business with a local company, contact Valley Fuel. If you want to find out how to contact Valley Fuel, go to valleyfuels.com or your No Nonsense Roundtable. This segment of the No Nonsense Roundtable is brought to you by McClure, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Chevy, and Buick, and Perry. Hey, all new car dealers pay the same price for their new cars and trucks. There's no volume discount. So your buying decision now comes down to price and ease of doing business. Family owned for generations, you'll find John McClure himself there in the dealerships day to day, and you get a great no-nonsense deal you'll be hard-pressed to find anywhere else. Contact them at McClure-ChryslerDodgeJeep.com or simply go to NoNonsenseRoundtable.com to connect with them. Welcome to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We're talking today to Dr. Rajeev Ramchandran. And he's not only an ophthalmologist, but he's an ophthalmologist surgeon, or ophthalmologist surgeon. I guess that's not really a way to say it. He's an eye doctor surgeon. I mean, how do we say that so it sounds more intelligent than I am?
Well, ophthalmologists are usually surgeons, but I'm a vitreoretinal surgeon. That's a more complex terminology. So I do surgery on the retina, the back of the eye.
Okay. Very sophisticated stuff. And he's of Indian descent. And we were talking about the Indian culture in Rochester in particular, because there is a culture that I have become familiar with because my wife started being interested in the Indian culture through seeing a Bollywood movie of all things years and years ago. And she got interested, and then she went beyond the Bollywood movies because she got interested in what's behind it and what's the culture like. And then she met some people of Indian descent and started becoming friends with them. And then we became friends with other people that of Indian descent. And then she was involved with an Indian community center, and eventually you fellas, gals, invited her to be on the board, and we just got so enamored with the Indian community, and it's amazing the things that you do and the community that you have, and the families and the bond of the religion and the facility that you have in Penfield. I mean, it's something that a lot of people don't know about, but they should know about, and that's all what the No Nonsense Roundtable was about.
That's great, Dom. Thank you for having me on this show. And, Indians have been in Rochester since the 1930s. There were professors and students at the University of Rochester, started the India Association of Rochester. And then the next really big wave came in the 60s. So my uncles came in the 60s, and a lot of the older Indians in our community came in the 60s. And by the 70s, people started saying, hey, we should have a community group. There was no, of course, internet. There were phone calls to India were very complex. You had to book a call often. People often didn't have telephones in their own home at that time in India. It was a very different India. And I remember calling my grandparents in the 80s, where we actually had to go to a neighbor's house to get a phone. The neighbor was a doctor, so he had a phone in the home. And we had to book a call sometimes. And so you had to call the operator and say, I want to call. And 11 o'clock at night, when the call lines were free, they would give you a call. Of course, now you've laid more cables, and now it's more satellites out there, and the whole world is very different. But back then, that's how it was.
Well, yeah, international call back then was a big deal, and I mean, even a domestic call, I had to pick the time where you could afford to do it. But let's talk about the organizational told, the facility that you have, some of the presentations and festivals and whatever. I mean, Diwali is just. I mean, if you've never experienced a Diwali festival, I mean, you have to. And the beauty of what you do and the theater that you have, and it's just fantastic. Let's just talk about some of this stuff. And the other thing is, how many things you do for the community.
Yeah, definitely. So the community organization, the Indian Community Center, was started in 1984 as the community center was bought and purchased at that time. The organization had its roots in the 70s, as I said, and was incorporated in the late 70s, early 80s. And it really started as a service organization. We were here to celebrate Indian culture, but it was also to be service to the community. A lot of people who started were businessmen, were doctors, were people who wanted to serve the community, and professors too, who were all into teaching and helping each other. And so with that, we started a community center where we had school and classes about our Indian culture. Again, there was no internet to learn about Indian culture. There were very few books out there that we got in our libraries about Indian culture. So this is a way that our parents and community leaders, elders could impart that knowledge onto children who grew up in the Rochester area.
Well, what's amazing to me, and in a wonderful way, is it's really a family thing. I mean, you go to one of your affairs, and it's grandparents with the kids and the grandkids, and it's all together. And on stage you might have some type of play or musical, and everybody's involved in it, and the food is fantastic, and the women, I mean, the saris are all beautiful, and it's a matter of course. It's not like somebody's putting on airs or something like that. I mean, it's a culture that we're not familiar with. It's delightful, it really is.
Very colorful culture. The food and the spices, good food, good eating, much like the Italian culture. Eating good food and having good socialization, hearing the language that you're familiar in hearing. India, again, has so many dialects and at least 26 official languages. There's lots and lots of a diverse culture within India, sort of like you have in Europe in general. And it's celebrated all in the Indian Community Center. We have various plays and events, a lot of dances on stage. Again, it's multi-generational too. And that's really key.
I'm laughing because you said just like the Italian culture, you don't have yelling there. It's just a little bit different,
It depends on what part of India you're from. There are some louder groups than others, but it is definitely a lot of fun, and kids could come there and see each other who share that same heritage, and that was a key thing. We grew up in school, and it was a very different culture when we were at school, when we came home, and that dichotomy was something that we could share with our fellow kids who grew up in Rochester.
Well, what I love is that you're very welcoming. I mean, we're not Indian. I mean, Nita, I'm a pure blood Italian. She's eclectic European, she would say, and the girls actually thought there was a country eclectic or something. I mean, she's eclectic European. We don't know what nationality she came from originally years ago, but welcoming, absolutely welcoming. You never feel out of place, like we don't belong there. It's a great organization. Now, how many people are in the group itself, the formal group itself?
Yeah, so there are about 10,000 families in the Indian community here. So I would say about 2,000 of them are part of the Indian Community Center. And so we have a transient population too who come and go for work and everything like that. But the stable population here, a lot of them are members of the Indian community, or they do come to the community, whether or not be official members. They go to our activities, and our activities swell up to 500 people sometime. In fact, at the India Fest that takes place outside in the Indian community grounds had about 1,000 people. So it was wonderful.
Well, tell us a little bit more about some other services you provide through the Indian Community Center.
Sure, definitely. So I want to tell the audience about one of our service activities, because it's really great to showcase and to get more people involved in how we're helping Rochester. During the pandemic, I was chairman of the ICC Board of Trustees, and at that time we saw a lot of need in the community, especially the hunger that was taking place in our community. not only we had Red Cross blood donor drives to help with the blood donation in our community, but we also started doing food drives and helping the folks who are in food deserts in our community to get the food and nutrition they need. Especially during the pandemic, this was very hard. So we started partnering with the Southwedge Food Pantry, which is now the People's Pantry in downtown Rochester, to provide grocery bags and food supplies to the population. And that formed a group in the Indian community called DOST. DOST means friend in Hindi, and the acronym stands for Developing Ourselves, Serving Together Harmoniously. And that's the idea that I grew up with in the Indian community, where we would all come together as children and adults to help serve in soup kitchens, to help feed the homeless and those in need, and to serve people in other ways, and brought together the Indian community and made a lot of good friends through that process, not only in the Indian community and outside of the community. So it's really important that we continue this service. And so every second Saturday in 2024 and onwards, we're going to be at the People's Pantry in the downtown Rochester, which is on Avenue D. 555 Avenue D in the city of Rochester, and we're going to be helping the People's Pantry give out food to those in need and really help enrich the population. We're also looking for other activities to get involved as Indian Community's public service arm, and we hope to get great ideas from the community to see how we can help.
That's amazing. Coming up, we'll talk more about the history of India, and we'll get into stuff about the solar eclipse.
This section of the No Nonsense Roundtable is brought to you by, well, the No Nonsense Roundtable. You see, at the No Nonsense Roundtable, we do marketing for different organizations, and let me give you an example. Here's an ad that we did for the Rotary Sunshine Camp just recently, and it was voiced by Don Alhart.
It's a magical place for kids of all abilities.
At no charge, the Rochester Rotary Sunshine Camp has been serving children of all abilities for the last 100 years. Help us grow into the next 100 years. Go to sunshinecamp.org to learn more about how you can help.
Where kids have no barriers to fun. The Rochester Rotary Sunshine Camp.
We do all sorts of things, mainly for smaller companies, so if you'd like to investigate the possibility of us doing some work for you, contact me at nononsenseroundtable.com. Well, welcome back. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We're here with Dr. Rajeev. I'm going to call you Dr. Rajeev to make my job easier. And we're going to finish up the story of India, and then we're going to get into a discussion about the solar eclipse and what you need to do to protect your eyes, because the good doctor here is not only an ophthalmologist, but he's a surgeon, very distinguished individual. So at one time, there was the British rule, and the British... the impression that we have is that the British were pretty strict, and they, I mean, in all honesty, looked down at people that were native to India. And the other thing about India that, you know, Nita has taught me is that the language and the dialects. I mean, there's no like one common language is there. But the other thing too is because of the British influence, how many people that live in India or have an Indian background speak English. Right. And you know, the funny thing is it gets adopted into your language, because we'll watch a Bollywood movie and all of a sudden there's an English word in the middle of, you know, whatever else, you know, dialect they're speaking. It's rather kind of interesting.
Right. So those are great points, Tom. You know, the British, the Europeans came to India. They were fascinated by Indian culture first, because I think they saw a lot of similarities with their own. And they saw that it's a very sophisticated culture. They actually learned a lot about their culture because they wanted to, govern India according to the local rules. And so they often in the 1700s, a lot of the British, they married local Indians. They were trying to be more part of the culture. But something happened in the 1800s, at the Victorian age, that the British basically at that time, who were now in control, they had defeated the French, and so the British were in power, and they just said, no, we don't want to have anything to do with local Indian customs or culture. We basically want to rule our own way, and
the question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the question, the question that really compels is that, so the attitude of the Europeans toward people of India changed? I mean, that they looked at Indians with great respect until the Victorian era, and then they changed to look down on you. Is that, I mean, to put it in simple terms?
In simple terms, yes. I think there was a change over the people who are coming now from England to India, who are in leadership positions. They may not have had the same worldly outlook or worldly education, and so they were a different kind of focus. They were there to solely make money, and they didn't really worry about the local cultures. So that also could have been there as well, from my knowledge of history. So yes, it was a change in sort of focus, and they were creating now people who were educated in the British traditions. They got rid of all the local education. They said, if India is to be ruled, we have to get rid of those local schools and the local education system, which was very robust in India. And so they imparted their own ways of doing things, and they created a group of civil servants, and a lot of them became lawyers and professionals who learned English, as you said. English is probably after the United States, it's the next country in the world. Probably it's most widely spoken is in India, probably because of the large numbers of people. So I think. Because of that, this group of people basically learned the British laws and say, hey, wait a minute. Just like the Americans said, taxation without representation, the Indians started saying the same thing, that you can't do these unjust laws to us. We know the laws, we know the rules that you govern by, and we want to have the fairness that the British subjects get. We want to be the subjects of Britain too. And so that started this national movement. It was sort of a movement that they wanted home rule. They wanted to have a place that was equal in the British setting, just like any other British person in England and in the United Kingdom. But eventually it became to the point where they couldn't trust England. During Winston Churchill's time, Winston Churchill took away food from the state of Bengal and caused a huge Bengal famine. A lot of Indian soldiers went to fight in both World War I, World War II, and other wars that the British had, and weren't fairly compensated afterwards. And so there was a lot of unjust policies and practices going on that the Indians, I think, got fed up. And leaders in the Indian national movement said, no, enough is enough. We need British to quit India, and we need our own country. And at that time, we were talking about partition. There was another group of folks, both amongst the Hindus and also Muslims, who had said that we want our own part of India. And the British had done this to begin with. They had separated, Hindus and Muslims in their divide and conquering of India and the way they were treating India. In fact, they divided the state of Bengal into a large Muslim majority and a large Hindu majority in 1905, well before actual India partition took place. So they already kind of put the seeds into the setting of what partition was. And remember, India was a diverse group of cultures and princely states. It was a big administrative task, very complex to administer. And when the British decided to give India its independence and started to leave, and also that was due to World War II had just happened, and the British were strained economically. They were strained, and not only economically but also resource-wise. They were tired. Their country had been destroyed with German attacks, and their army was taxed, and they weren't willing to sort of continue the efforts to sort of run a huge colony, their jewel in the crown, right?
So the partition created Pakistan, right? And it was because they separated the people of Muslim faith. Is that accurate?
The Hindus, who are majority now in India, and Muslims. Now, you remember, India there was a lot of mixture where people lived. There are a lot of Hindus who live in where is now present-day Pakistan and Bangladesh, and which was East Pakistan when the partition happened. But there was a sense that Muslims wanted their own land, but it was only a select group of Muslims, and it was Hindus wanted their own land. Again, only a select group of Hindus. I think the majority of India India wanted to have one country. And many of the leaders, even in the Indian National Congress, including Mahatma Gandhi, was very distraught, I think, in this situation, just reading from the history that I've read. Anyways, it ended up the point that the British said, okay, to have peace, we need to basically divide India between these two religions. And so there would be less chaos and less turmoil if we did that, because if we had them not divided, they'll end up attacking each other, which is totally outrageous, because these cultures have lived together, these communities have lived together peacefully for so many years and for millennia. So it's very, very ridiculous. But the person who drew the line, who was in charge of that, Radcliffe, he basically never even visited India. He just basically took a map and he drew a line where he thought people could live in different sections of the country, and it just created a lot of havoc. And I think Europeans have done this in Africa and now in the Middle East, and we've seen some problems with doing that over time.
Well, they literally made them move, right? I mean, they didn't have a choice. Isn't that true, or am I mistaken about that?
Nobody knew where the line was. At least in the eastern part of India and Bengal, they knew where the line was because they had a previous partition of the area. But in the western part, in Punjab especially, they didn't know where that line was. Who was going to be in this Pakistan? Who was going to be in the new India? Nobody knew until the last minute, and that caused a lot of havoc.
Well, there were two Pakistans too. I mean, they were separated from each other, so it wasn't. I never could understand that.
And
that doesn't make any sense.
And they were different culturally. One spoke majority Bengali, the other one was Urdu, Punjabi, and Sindhi. It was very different cultures. Two different cultural people, and ended in 1971. They had a war of liberation of Bangladesh, and so that's basically the creation of a new country in 1971 because of, again, a lot of oppression and unfair practices, I guess, in that country as well, in the Pakistan, between the two groups of Pakistan, their east and west.
Well, and you got Pakistan who has nuclear bombs, and you have India that has nuclear bombs, and you have people religiously on each side who are diametrically opposed to one another, and that's an interesting thing.
That's a whole topic in itself.
And we're about ready to head into a break. And I lied to you guys. I said we were going to talk about the solar eclipse, and I'm not going to lie to you now. We're going to try to do that when we get back.
This section of the No Nonsense Roundtable is brought to you by Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage. I don't know if it's a hop, skip, and a jump or just a short scoot down 390, but you get to exit 10, make a left, and 2 miles down the road, you'll see Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage. Tonight we have Davey Knowles, and there's still tickets left. He's a blues guitarist born on the Isle of Man. Go to fanaticspub.com, get your tickets, and come see us.
Well, welcome back. You're listening to No Nonsense Roundtable. We're talking to Rajeev Ramchandran. Is that right now?
Closer.
Close enough. Closer than I was. And as I promised you, we were going to talk about the solar eclipse with the good doctor, because he's an eye surgeon, and he has some words of advice, wisdom, direction, because we're about ready to head into a solar eclipse week. It's going to be a very, very crowded here, and this thing is going to last for just a few minutes or whatever, and you need to know a certain amount of things. So, doctor, go right ahead. Tell us what we need to know.
Great. So it's really important never to look directly at the sun, no matter if it's the eclipse or not the eclipse. So you should always have eye protection whenever trying to view the sun. And this eye protection is not sunglasses, not your glasses that transition to darker lenses or anything like that. It is special solar viewing glasses. And this is the International Safety Organization standard 12312-2. That is a code that should be found in all of these glasses. It's very important.
Oh, let's repeat that.
12312-2.
Okay, no, go right ahead.
Yeah, so
while you're talking, I'm going to go get my glasses.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we wear these solar eclipse glasses. Now, if you put them on, you can get them, at Wegmans or online or at the Rochester Museum and Science Center even. And these glasses basically seal out all light. If you look at your desk light, or if you look at an overhead light, you can't even see it because it's so dense. A lot of them are made out of mylar. It's a special synthetic synthetic material that blocks all kinds of light, including the harmful UV and ultraviolet light that's coming from the sun. And this light is invisible to our eyes. We don't see it, so it's not invisible light. Now, normally when you try to gaze up at the sun, it's so bright you blink and you can't even look at it because your body has these natural defense mechanisms. Another thing that happens is your pupils, the opening of the eye that lets light into the eye, constricts or closes, right? So because of those things, you avoid all that light and harmful rays, the UV and ultraviolet rays coming into your eyes. Well, during the eclipse, things get dim, right? And you still get exposed to the UV and the ultraviolet light, but the visible light is a little bit less. So you're not squinting, your eyes are open more, and your pupils are dilating now because the light is not as bright. And so those two things allow more of that visible light to come in, but it also allows that bad light, the bad wavelengths, the ultraviolet and infrared light. So you know how you get a skin sunburn over time with the sun exposure, and the skin is always exposed to light. There's no pupil or covering unless you wear a shirt or have that sunscreen, right? Well, your eyes have these protections like the pupil, but the pupil now is dilated in dim light, and you're getting all this UV and ultraviolet light, and it can burn your retina. Basically, it can cause phototoxicity to the retina,
and that doesn't heal, right? I mean, once it's gone, it's gone.
Once
right?
it's gone, it's gone. It's not like the skin. The skin regenerates, but think about getting really bad sunburn, a 3rd-degree burn that stays there as a scar, and you can see, oh my God, that was a sunburn I had for years ago, and it's still there today. Well, the retina, if you get a scar, especially in that central area where the light is focused on, it is permanent, and it can damage your vision permanently, and you will not be able to see faces, not be able to read, not be able to do your daily work. And this blindness can be permanent.
Well, there are two things that I want to make a point on just as a casual observer. One is when you tell your kids, don't look at the sun. I mean, what does a 10-year-old do? Right? I mean,
that's true.
Yeah. I mean, so you got to be careful of the kids. And the thing is that you got to keep your eyes on the kids, because if you're looking at the sun and they don't have their glasses and whatever. The other point I want to make that I've heard, and I'm absolutely sure about this, is that there's a lot of these glasses being sold on Amazon.com that do not have the requirement you're talking about. Now I'm going to give you one of my glasses here. Sure. And there you go. And take a look at that. And I think right in the back there, you taught me something, right?
Yep, there it is. ISO 12312-2.
So I got those, not that I have any association with them, but I got them from B&H Camera. My daughter, being a photographer, says, Dad, you should go to B&H because they're professionals at this and they probably got the right glasses.
That's true. That's true. Credible sources for selling these glasses are going to have good glasses. The drugstores, the Rochester Museum of Science Center on their website, all these places have credible sources they're getting these glasses from.
123-12-2. 123-12-2. I think that's great advice. Anything else before we go?
Sure. And the other thing you have to remember is that if you're going to use binoculars or telescopes or looking through a camera lens to look at the eclipse, you need to make sure that those devices have solar filters too, because those devices concentrate light and they can actually the light can burn through your eclipse glasses if they're not protected. So it's really important that whatever you're viewing your eclipse by, that they're also having protection.
Now, I think a lot of people are thinking, well, when it's in its totality, it's okay to look at. Is that true?
So, people say that, you probably, when totality really happens, it'll be difficult to view that totality through your eclipse glasses because the solar light will be so dim, and people will probably try to take them off. But I want to warn people that as soon as totality ends, within 90 seconds to a couple minutes, that bright sunlight's going to come back again, and the few seconds that you're exposed, you could damage your retina. So, it's really important to keep your glasses on even through totality, and possibly if you can't see anything, kind of peek around it, but you still have to have them on your head.
Okay, next question. Maybe it's a silly question. How about if it's cloudy? I mean, that doesn't help, does it? I mean, the cloudiness, you still shouldn't be looking at it, right? Or what? I mean,
if you can't find the sun in the clouds, then it's probably okay.
Yeah, if you can't see the sun.
You can't see the sun. In Rochester, like today, it's really cloudy. You probably can't find where the sun is. But if you can find the sun, in the clouds, because sometimes the cloud cover isn't so thick, you still should wear those eclipse glasses.
Well, let's hope we don't have lake effect snow.
Hopefully not.
Okay, so we have about 3 or 4 more minutes here. So let's talk about the wonderful things that the Indian community does, and some of the events that you have, and how do we get in touch with you? And let's do this retail thing where we give people your email address and whatever. I have been to affairs that you've had, the Diwali things, and you have these shows, and you have talent shows, and you have these theater and musical stuff. I mean, it's fantastic, and everybody and the food is fantastic, and the people are warm. I mean,
yeah, that's wonderful, and I'm so happy you've come out, Dom, and Anita being part of the Indian Community Center for many years. And our community center started in 1984. We had enough of immigration from India at that time to start this center, and we have many activities throughout the year. We have a Mother's Day around the second week of May. We have a picnic in June. We have hopefully another India Fest this year around early September. But coming up, we have our annual banquet, and that banquet this year is going to have a great speaker. His name is Dr. Prabhu David, and he is actually the Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs at Rochester Institute of Technology, and he's going to come out and talk about his role at the RIT, and he's going to have a great session there after dinner, and that's on March 30th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. You can go on our website, iccrochester.org, and sign up.
Well, it's wonderful. The website to get a hold of you guys
is iccrochester.org.
iccrochester.org. And the other thing, I think people aren't aware of the beautiful facility that you have.
Yeah.
It's in what is it, Penfield, right?
Yeah, it's on the border of Penfield and Macedon. Our mailing address is Macedon, and it is right on Monroe-Wayne County Line Road. It's actually 2171 Monroe-Wayne County Line Road, Macedon, New York 14502.
And like I said, just warm, wonderful people. The thing about the Indian culture is that, how many people live in India now itself?
1.4 billion.
1.4 billion.
The most populous country in the world.
Billion people. And the thing is that you think about the complexity of the whole thing. How many dialects are there? I mean, just a ballpark.
Oh, probably 850 plus.
Right. You're trying to coordinate all of this and talk about colonization. We talk about colonization in the United States and how horrible it was and stuff like that. But the thing that I did learn from your talk today too is that the cultural change in Europeans in the mid 1800s, I guess, was substantial. But the thing about India is that India was I don't know if you would call it liberated, but it wasn't until 1948. Which is the same thing. You talk about Palestine and Israel and whatever. It was that whole shtick back then.
Yeah. Definitely. And remember, the colonizers weren't there to enrich the country, unlike previous rulers of India. They were there to take, and basically, make the country dry. And so it's a very different aspect of things. But now the great thing about all of this is that Indians are there across the world, and spreading their culture. And here in Rochester, we're doing the same thing through the Indian Community Center. And we love you all to come out and visit us to all our activities. Please visit our website. Please come out and see us on the 30th of March is our first event.
Okay. Well, at that, next week, it's a No Nonsense Roundtable, 10 o'clock right here.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every weekend from 10 to 11 on News Radio WHAM 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.